I am the chief investigator on a study called Dreams Start. And I always forget what that stands for in full, but I think it's like a dementia related manual for sleep strategies for relatives. And it is a randomized control trial. So we're testing an intervention, which is not a drug intervention. It's a psychosocial intervention, which is aimed at addressing some of the sleep difficulties that people who are living with dementia experience, that we know are very common. It's very practical. It's about, things that might help, practical strategies that people can use. And we did an initial study a few years ago to see whether it was feasible and acceptable. So really to see whether we could do it, and whether people liked it and were happy to use it, which they were. So now we are testing it in full to see whether it actually works, because we don't know if it actually works to help people who have sleep difficulties to have less bad sleep disturbance, and whether it helps the carers and family members who are supporting them. And Jane works with me on that trial.
I'm one of the patient participants, so bringing kind of real life experience of the issues of sleeplessness and sleep problems for both the person who is living with dementia and the carer. Like a lot of people, we were having issues around getting the full night's sleep, so often tired, which just exacerbates everything you're dealing with. And I've actually carried on having problems, since I lost Mum. We're talking almost 9 years next month, and I still find that I do have trouble sometimes getting to sleep, and I still have that waking up in the middle of the night thinking, got to do something, and then you remember, no, I don't. I suppose because I was caring for almost as long as I've not been caring, so I have got some patterns there that were entrenched at the time, and I just wished we'd got Penny in her work at that time.
But I think that's really important, isn't it? Because lots of people will say that those problems can last a long, long time. Lots of people whose relatives have moved into a care home, say, will still be waking up in the night every night. So I think sleep patterns can become very entrenched, can't they? And I suppose the reason we're doing this research is because we know, well, there's a couple of reasons. One is because we know that these sleep problems are very common. They are very distressing for people living with dementia, and they are also incredibly distressing for those who are supporting them. So it's really hard. I think we all know what it's like to not sleep at night and the impact that can have the next day or longer term. Supporting a relative who has who's living with dementia, and I think if you're doing that from a position of just being exhausted, it's really, really hard. So we wanted to do that. And the other reason is because we know that medication, firstly, isn't very effective. There isn't like a magic pill that helps people who are living with dementia who have sleep problems. And we also know that the medication can have a lot of really harmful side effects, and can increase, people are more likely to fall over. It can make people very drowsy at the wrong times. So there's lots of reasons to look for things that don't involve medication. But we also know it's a really, really complicated problem with lots of different causes. So there isn't going to be like a straightforward answer. What would you say did you see happening, Jane, with your mum?
Well, I suppose, as you say, there was the falling asleep in the first place because you're worried, and everything that's gone, you've gone through during the day goes round and round and round. And I think as a carer, you can quite often feel a lot of guilt. In fact, I think most of us do, that we haven't done our best. So if you've already had a bad night's sleep the night before, and you're tired, and everyone knows when you're tired, your patience gone, everything gets blown out of all proportion, and you can get quite irritable. So you maybe then have done things that you wished you hadn't, like, they've said something and you've retorted the way that you wished you hadn't. Or maybe for me, there were times when I actually was so tired that we didn't go out because the effort of getting Mum into the wheelchair, out to the car to wheelchair, etc. And I just thought, can I manage that? Am I going to be good enough, even driving safely, because I'm so tired? And because we weren't going out, then you feel guilty because I didn't go out, or I feel guilty because I have, as I say, snapped at her, and everything just becomes really so difficult. So you then go to bed and you're just lying there, it's going round and round in your head. And then you're worrying about, are you going to get a call? Or even when I was staying with her in the same house, are the alarms going to go? Am I going to have to get up? And I think then any sort of slight noise, you do wake up and you have to go and check, are they okay? And so that's something. I don't think you sleep as deeply. I mean, Penny would know better because she's the researcher, but definitely succumb to illness more. And it just seems to be like a vicious circle. But you don't dare take, Penny mentioned drugs. You don't dare take something, because what if I've taken myself out and mum has a fall or something really bad, or even she managed to get out of the house, and I'm so tired and I've taken something and I don't wake up.
And I think people often, I think you're right. I think that people's sleep will be, so for a family member, your sleep is always kind of probably not at the sort of deeper level, because you are listening out for things, even like, even while you're asleep, the quality of your sleep will not be as good.
That's what we used to say when we'd had a bit of an accident. It was our joke that because we just change the bed and then worry about it the next morning. And at one point we were going for about 3 duvets a night, and a big heap. And we got to the point where mum said they're dead duvets, we've drowned them. And it was our way of joking through it.
Oh my goodness.
I remember her telling one of the guys from the district nurses, he just looked at this big pile of sort of duvets waiting to be attended to, and looked, and she said, oh, it's all right, they're just dead duvets, we drowned them. To explain to him later what we meant. I'll keep this in.
I used to work with someone, actually, like when I was at a home care before I became, and she had dementia. I used to go and see her every day, and she used to chuck the duvets out of the window. So she had a couple, and part of my thing was that I would kind of go into the back, get the duvet, wash it out, replace it with the other one. And there was just this cycle of kind of retrieving them from the back, because I think, again, she kind of knew there was something wrong and that something had happened in the night, or she was hot, or she was awake. I don't quite know, but so we just had this pattern. So I think that there are different issues, aren't there, that come up. So I think partly it's, what you're talking about, Jane, is actually if someone is awake during the night, and it could be that there's a kind of quite reasonable reason why someone is awake. They might wake up needing the loo, or need to go to the loo a bit more often, or it might be that people wake up because they're cold or hungry or whatever. But for someone with dementia, often it may be that they are confused when they wake up, that they don't know whether it's nighttime or not. They may then start getting out of bed or calling out, or you might see behaviours that are particularly difficult for family members to manage. And as I think Jane described it as well, like, we're not always at our most tolerant and patient in the middle of the night. So I think what people will often say to me is, like, they sort of know what they have to do and how to settle their mum or wife or husband back in bed, but at that point they're just like, just go back, so they maybe say things that are wrong things to do, that can make things a bit worse. So that can happen. But I think what's really important as well is that we're not just talking about things that happen during the night, like those kind of more obvious behaviors, that actually when people are living with dementia, they're sort of the bit of their brain that kind of is involved with maintaining their sleep can be affected. So you might see things like people mixing up night and day, that sort of increased confusion, but you also might see people having more difficulty falling asleep, staying asleep, having a sort of deeper sleep. You also may see a lot of sleeping during the day. And I think the problem with sleeping a lot during the day and not doing very much during the day is that then that has an effect on your sleep at night. So I think there's a whole load of things that happen during the day and then at night as well that are distressing. And I think the other thing is that, Jane was talking about her own experience of kind of lying in bed worrying, but I think particularly for people who've been maybe more recently diagnosed with dementia, often they'll talk to us about, knowing that there's something wrong, being quite worried about it, and waking up in the night and thinking about those things. So there's kind of worry that, that can happen for anyone. All of the things that keep us awake at night will also, potentially keep someone living with dementia awake at night. But they have the added complexity of maybe other things that are kind of making it even harder for them to sleep. A big focus of our intervention is around daytime activity. And I think sometimes people find it a bit weird because we're not talking about sleep for a lot of the time in our intervention, but actually being stimulated, doing stuff that you enjoy during the day, getting out, and particularly getting into natural light. So, I won't get all technical, but actually having access to enough light is particularly important for people with dementia, because the bit of their brain that kind of tells them whether they're asleep at night needs those kind of cues, needs the light to kind of trigger that. And what we also know is, particularly during the pandemic, is that people are stuck in a lot more, aren't necessarily getting out into natural light, sort of getting active, not napping during the day, which sounds really easy. It's like, just stop your. It's really hard to stop someone from napping when they are very, very tired because they've been up all night. And also things like habits and routines that might seem really basic and obvious, but having your meal time at a set time, having a regular time that you wake up in the morning. And again, that's quite hard if you're up in the night and everyone's exhausted. And it's also hard if you're caring for a relative and the only time you have to yourself is maybe when they're still in bed in the morning, when you can get on with things. But it really does help to have those kind of regular patterns.
You were saying about the going out and having a good day and the fresh air and everything, and the sunlight, which is really important. And it makes me think, with Mum, we used to go out and, we used to go to garden nurseries because we're both keen on gardens, and there's so many activities you can do in a garden, garden centre, aromatherapy with all the sort of, the room scents, and we'd look at all the plants, using herbs again, having a little sniff of all the herbs, and just look at the plants because she loved plants. And then obviously the cafe, lunch, and then a bit of tea afterwards. She loved cream tea. We'd come back and she'd sit there sometimes and she had a big smile on her face. And she said, I have no idea what we did today, but I really enjoyed myself. Thank you. And then that would be a night when she got good sleep, because she had lots of stimulation, lots of things she really enjoyed. But as you say, fresh air, interaction with other people, because they were always chatting to her. Our favourite nurseries, they knew her, so they would have a chat with her. And it was just great. But another thing I thought was quite interesting was when you were talking about the nighttime experience. And when I wasn't staying with Mum, and I would come in, and of course, because I had to quickly drive down, I'd do what you do, my night clothes, I'd put a sweatshirt and some leggings on and go in and then try and convince Mum to go back to bed. And sometimes she'd be sitting watching TV and it'd be 4 o'clock in the morning. And her view was, well, you're not ready for bed.
Yeah.
Although I didn't really kind of perceive that. It was later on I realized. But also a big one for her was, well, it can't be nighttime because we don't have TV at night, which of course for most of her life we didn't. So it didn't make sense it was nighttime. And I think she just thought I was trying to get rid of her and make her go to bed. And I saw a documentary, I think it was about a care home where most of the uniforms at night look like night clothes.
Yeah.
So that if the residents meet a member of staff when they come out of their bedroom, it isn't, people in daytime clothes, it's people that look like they've got night clothes on. They'd encourage them back to bed and maybe give them a cup of cocoa or something, all the things that you associate with nighttime. And I have heard apparently you can get the like a DVD where you can actually play it. I've never actually tracked it down, where it kind of does the national anthem and then disappears to a black dot like it used to.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
But that thing where you can actually make it look like, oh, and it's bedtime. But it's that thing of, if you're feeling confused and you're feeling a little bit unsure about what's going on, and someone's trying to tell you it's nighttime, and all of the evidence, what they're wearing, the way they're behaving, the fact the TV is on, doesn't make sense to you. Why are you going to believe them? And you don't feel tired. Why are you going to believe it's bedtime?
And it's the same during the day. So I mean, I think that's a really, really important point, that and something that comes out in our intervention, you know, the environment, the bedtime environment, and the sort of bedtime routine is incredibly important, like settling someone down, all those visual cues and reminders. It might be sounds, it might be smells, it might be pictures, but anything that is saying to somebody it's nighttime and you should be in bed is going to be helpful. So I think, you know, things like having, lots of people will have lights on in rooms because they're worried about, say, their, you know, relative being able to get up safely in the night, but actually what that means is they've got a light on during the night. So thinking about ways around that, so kind of night lights or lights somewhere else, or everyone's different, so it's about finding individual creative ways for your particular situation, but also during the day as well. I mean, one of the most, however sort of high tech and in-depth our work is, I think of some of the times I think it's been most useful, it's the intervention has been opening the curtains during the day. I mean, that's it. You know, people are often sitting in quite darkened rooms, they're a bit sensitive to light, they don't want it, and their relatives don't want to kind of irritate them by insisting on having the curtains open. Often people can't get out as well, they might be bedbound, or it's very, very difficult to get out. And just opening the curtains at a particular time, starting the day at a particular time, can really have a big difference for people. And things like not having, it's come up a lot recently in the supervision that I do for the people who are getting the intervention, it is a lot of people will have like a lot to eat in the middle of the night. You know, that they'll wake up and say they're hungry, and then their relatives will respond by giving them a big meal, you know, a lot to eat in the middle, and that tells your body and your brain that it's daytime because you're eating. So, you know, things like that, just minimizing snacking, just very sort of practical things can make a big difference. And it's not saying that it's a simple problem, it's a very complicated problem to solve, but I think, you know, there are lots of small things that may make a difference.
In that if you're having a lot of drinks, then you're more likely to want to get up during the night. So as long as someone's had, you've got to make sure they've had hydration, because obviously you don't want to get dehydrated, but if they've had sufficient drinks during the day, maybe think about easing off a little bit in the evening. Yeah,
I think, well, drinking lots is obviously very important, but I think, as you say, not drinking after a certain time, or, you know, you know what you know your own relative, but and having caffeine after a certain time as well, I think can be a stimulant, but it can also make you need to go to the toilet more. So lots of switching to decaf, or introducing other drinks, not having sugary drinks, and also alcohol as well. I think often people think that alcohol is something that helps with sleep, and, you know, their routine might be to have a drink before bed, but actually, although it can help you to fall asleep or have a bit of a sort of sedating effect, it actually leads to worse quality sleep. So, you know, having a lot of alcohol, particularly in the evenings, can also make your sleep worse. So it's little things like that sometimes people don't realise can make a difference. Anything that we can do to kind of help strengthen the link between bed and sleep can be really powerful, because I think, as you say, people are trying to make sense of what's going on around them, and sometimes they're not getting that quite right. So, you know, you know, even things like waking up and thinking, you know, it's starting to get like, oh, I need to get my children up for school. So they're sort of right, but they're also really wrong. But it isn't helpful to kind of go in and be like, no, you know, it's the middle of the night, you don't have to, but your children left home 20 years ago, because that again can be quite unhelpful for people. So you have to, it's also about how do you provide comfort and reassurance for people, because actually that experience, I think, of being a bit confused in the middle of the night and not knowing something's not right, but not quite knowing what that is very frightening often. And I think So a lot of it is also about the kind of comfort that you can provide.
If you are kind of doing the calming, as you said, coming up, you've had a really good day, you've both been out, you've enjoyed yourself, and then you sort of do this calming and thinking about bed and everything. It also helps the carer, because you're tired, you've had a good day, you feel actually we've you know, I haven't failed today, I haven't got my guilt, so it's not going to wear around. But I think that sort of calming for both of you also can then help the carer to start feeling like, okay, maybe I will sleep better tonight.
And all the things that we've said, I think will apply to a carer as well. You know, that, you know, having a regular pattern and routine, being physically active, getting out, you know, natural, like all of those things are useful for everybody. Having other, if there are other people around, involving them, getting them to do some of the stuff so that you can have a break. All of those things are, you know, going to make a big difference. Being active during the day and being in natural light and having a routine make a massive difference. And it doesn't always happen. I mean, it doesn't happen overnight. And sometimes it can take a long time. But all of those things that are good for you and are good for the person living with dementia, they're good for the carer's own sleep. And also that it's okay to ask for help. Because we know that sleep problems are kind of often the thing that make people not be able to continue to supporting a relative at home because they're so devastating. Yeah. I don't know, Jane, you might want the final word on that though. So.
Yeah, I think as you said, a lot of it is about going out, having the natural light, having the fresh air. I mean, it's good for your health anyway. The exercise is good for you, keeping you more steady for both of you. But it's also that if you can get out and maybe have some social interactions, because I think having other people that you can talk to, that can sometimes reassure you that actually you're not doing as badly as you thought you were.